My name's John Collier of Monument Tools Limited, and people often ask me about my business and how it was founded, how long has it been in existence, and who owns it. It's my privilege today to give you a short talk on all of that. It's a family business that we've had for now the 5th generation, and it goes back originally to 1880 when my great-grandfather started selling tools from his front parlour in a house in Cornwall Road, Brixton, which is now been demolished and taken over by Her Majesty's Prison at Brixton. This is a photograph of him. It's a very faded photograph of him standing outside it in, I think it was 1905. Similarly, there's my great-grandmother as well, standing outside the same premises. Clearly, that got a bit small for them, so they then moved to the middle of Brixton in a street called Electric Avenue, which pioneered the use of electricity to light streets in the early part of the 20th century. Business was subsequently taken over by my grandfather, Arthur, and this picture shows Electric Avenue in about 1910 with both names, that's George Collier and Arthur Collier. You may be wondering why we're talking about Colliers. There is a direct link between Colliers and Monument Tools, and without talking about Colliers, you don't really get the feel for how Monument Tools came about. That's the inside of the shop. Sorry about the rather dog-chewed photograph. And then that became too small, so my grandfather, who is here, this is my grandfather, that's the original founder, George Collier's, one of his sons, and there was another brother called Alfred, which we will talk about in a minute. This is the outside of Collier's in 453 Brixton Road, London, which was part of a common called Rush Common, and the pavement in the Brixton Road, right by where the tube station is now, were very, very deep. It took an Act of Parliament to allow the building line to come forward, which my grandfather was involved with in 1931, and I have a gold watch to thank him for his effort to try and get all the people together to develop the site. As I said just now, my grandfather had several brothers, one of which was Alfred, who in about 1905, that sort of time, started selling plumbing tools near the monument in the City of London. And one of his claims to fame was that he supplied a pair of tailor's shears to the British Antarctic expedition of 1910. And this letter here is asking my great uncle to supply the pair of tailor's shears, and it's signed by nobody less than Captain Scott, hence Scott of the Antarctic. Meanwhile, my grandfather was running his shop, and it became clear that having manufactured products during the First World War, he was keen to carry on that after a while, and eventually came across a sheet saw, which became known as the sheet-axe saw, and this picture shows two gentlemen on a roof cutting a piece of corrugated iron roofing to prove that the saw worked perfectly well. We subsequently, as a result of that, called the business the Sheet-Axe Tool Works Limited as opposed to Monument Tools, because the gentleman, Alfred, who had supplied the scissors to Captain Scott, unfortunately went out of business in 1930. So the business, instead of being called Monument Tools at that stage, was called the Sheet-Axe Tool Works Limited, which I felt was, shall we say, a bit ungainly later on, but I'll tell you more about that. A lot of work had to be done to promote the products, and I'll just run through a number of photographs in black and white that we've got from exhibition stands that were put on by not only Collier's, but by the Sheet-Axe Tool Works Limited, most of which took place in London's Olympia exhibition hall. This one is 1932, just before the Sheetac Tool Works was originally incorporated. And it shows not a very good picture really, but there's that one, and then there's another one here which has got more tools. Another lovely one there showing these colonnades with the tools displayed. And that's now got Sheetac and Monument tools on it, and that's dated 1934. Meanwhile, my grandfather and my father by this time had bought a factory in Tunstall Road in Brixton with the idea of manufacturing products. I have some pictures here of the inside of that factory taken during the Second World War. As you can see, there was a lot of overhead belting running from shafting that ran along the factory from one huge motor that was placed up on the wall at one end of the factory. So we made a lot of products during the war, and particularly instrument screwdrivers, and then the Ministry of Supply products which they demanded. And there's another photograph inside the factory, and yet another one. And that shows inside the warehouse of the Sheetac Tool Works Limited. And again, you'll notice in this one the big export case, because by that time we were shipping stuff abroad, particularly to Australia and New Zealand and South Africa. At that sort of time, we took on two gentlemen who were experts at making wooden products. So we started up a woodworking division, which was in the same factory but on the ground floor, and we used to buy tons and tons of lignum vitae logs and turn them into mallets and bobbins and turn pins and mandrels, which some of you will be familiar with, which were used for manipulating lead pipes. Most of it is illegal now, of course, unless it's waste systems. And that's another shot inside the wood turning department. This one here was to do with making wing compasses. It's called a flash or butt welder. Very spectacular, when it was just welded the top of the compass onto the leg before it was cleaned up, and you couldn't see the join. A lot of work was put therefore into promoting the company, and particularly with these exhibitions, and some of the stands that we made were very decorative and very smart looking. There's another one. These are all back from the 1930s and 40s. There's another one there from the early 50s. That's 1951. And you'll notice the predominant name Sheetac Tool Works, but it does refer to Monument. And that one is 1954, 1963 we jumped to. And then there's another one here, which is 1965. And then I became involved with it at about that time. And this is one of my stands. I think that was probably taken up once again at Olympia. And then we moved, of course, when the National Exhibition Centre was founded in Birmingham. We exhibited there at building exhibitions. Obviously, we then changed to full colour. And then you'll notice in this picture there's a part of a drain cleaning machine. At that time we took on drain cleaning equipment which was made in the USA and which we still sell. The Brixton premises got too small, so we then had to move to Balham. And this is a picture of Balham Hill. We moved there in 1969, and it was, like Buckingham Palace compared with what we had before, which was all cramped together and not very clean and so on, and uneconomic premises. So then we bought this Balham Hill premises, which consisted of two bow-fronted Victorian buildings, and then in what was the back garden there was a factory and warehouse. And that's a picture of the inside of that factory. And then there's a detailed picture there of an operative operating a Ward 2DS, I think it was, capstan lathe making pipe cutter wheels, which subsequently went on to be made on cam autos, and now we make them on CNC turning machines. And instead of, in those days, taking roughly 2 minutes to make each wheel, we now make one every 16 seconds. Market was not just United Kingdom. We got involved in the Cologne Hardware Fair in Germany every 2 years, and that shows one of our stands in Cologne. I have to say, without exporting, we would not be the company that we are now. Even we did a show in Sydney in Australia, and that shows a picture of the stand and another picture of the stand in Sydney. We had a very good distributor there. Unfortunately, that business declined, and it is now quite difficult to export to Australia. Meanwhile, my father was helping to run Collier's at Brixton, which we still had, and this shows him in the 1950s demonstrating, I think there's a Surform file there, to an alderman in London Borough, Lambeth, and then there's a picture, or dare I say it, of me holding a drain cleaning machine. We took on the distributorship of these drain cleaning machines for an American manufacturer in 1965, and we continue to do so, as I said just now. We went in for a competition one year for a new product award and didn't win outright, but we came second, and this is me being presented with a poignard, which is in this nice velvet lined box, of which I'm very proud. It was a prize for designing what we call the size O pipe cutter. And the idea of it was that we made it in the UK, and we were the only people making something like that in the UK, because all the others had been coming in from abroad. So immediately we hit the imports from particularly Asia, and we still sell it. Even 22 and 24 Balham Hill became too small for us, so we took over the premises of a fishing tackle factory that was at 26 Balham Hill, and we opened this new warehouse next door in 1984. That same year, unfortunately, we had to make Collier's, the retail tool business, go out of business into members' voluntary liquidation, because it was just not on anymore, unfortunately. So it had been established for 104 years before we did that, and I know that my father was, shall we say, a little bit disappointed. I was too, but it enabled us to concentrate on promoting what had now become Monument Tools Limited, and that finally is a picture of Balham Hill, where the offices and factory were. That more or less brings us up to date, except that I haven't got any pictures to show you at the moment. We then found that Balham Hill was too small, so in 1996 I managed to sell the 22, 24 and 6 Balham Hill as a building site, and bought the factory that I'm talking to you from in London Borough, Sutton, in a place called Hackbridge. And we doubled the size of the factory that we had at Balham, and even now this has become too small, but we have been here now for 27 years. It enables us to manufacture more and more products and do more and more exports and get bigger and bigger. Well, I hope that's been of interest to you. And just to say finally that our family has been in the hand tool and hardware business for 143 years, which is not bad. Thank you.